getting Marc Franklin, Deputy Head of Multi-Asset Solutions at Asia and Manulife Investment Management with us, joining us on the show. Marc, thanks so much for joining in and lovely having you. At the outset, after Donald Trump having said this twice or thrice, and yesterday Kevin Hassett mentioning this as well, the Indian side has responded that the deal might be closer as well. Now, the anti-AI trade or not being in the AI camp has led to India underperforming the EM rally in 2025 significantly. Can the AI bubble coming off a little bit and a potential trade deal signing change or reverse the course for the Indian markets vis-a-vis emerging markets?
Good morning. It's certainly possible that people would reappraise the risk reward of the Indian equity market as a global or foreign asset allocator, particularly if there's a resolution to the trade dislocations, but also if market participants are looking to rotate away from very, very strong gainers that might be looking somewhat fully valued versus those laggard markets. The other side of the coin, of course, as well, is that India, to some extent, has suffered, maybe it's a strong word, suffered from the fact that other Asian markets have had strong positive narratives and catalysts in the last 12 to 24 months. Some of the more discounted markets, whether it's because of political resolutions or corporate governance reforms, and overseas investors have looked at that risk reward from a relatively low valuation starting point and found that as an attractive setup. Whereas if those stories start to look fully valued, an absence of further positive news flow, then people will return to India as that sort of core long-term secular growth story, albeit without much of a valuation reset in absolute terms.
Marc, morning. Alex here. I'm just wondering what you think about this conversation or expectation that the Chinese moves in the recent past about pushing that export factor and goods primarily, possibly dumping in various markets or at least increasing supplies. What are the implications for global trade and particularly in the US with inflation uncertain, the implications of tariffs uncertain? Could it have a softening impact there? What happens to commodities?
Yeah, well, global trade has been in a secular reversal pretty much since the aftermath of COVID. And of course, the Liberation Day tariff announcements earlier this year further accelerated that shift. We are moving away from a fully globalized world where the sourcing from the lowest cost bases is what drives export-import trade bilaterals. And we're moving more towards a situation where countries are looking to build resilience either to reshore or to nearshore. And it's no longer about sourcing the cheapest source. It's about industrial resilience, supply chain resilience, etc. In terms of inflation dynamics, if you look at the US economy, the good side of the economy has already been in somewhat of a recessionary picture for many months now. And if you look at freight dynamics, very recessionary, deflationary forces in some goods categories as well. Some exceptions are really those short cycle categories where the US is totally dependent upon imports, where the tariff increases have been effectively shared by the importers as well as the end customers. So things like furniture have seen quite inflationary pressures, but there are a number of other categories which are showing that sort of recessionary character. But it's really on the services side where ex-shelter you're seeing some upwards pressure on inflationary dynamics. So we still think that we're in a somewhat murky picture from an inflation point of view. But clearly, the attempts by China to export excess capacity help to kind of cushion the upside momentum from services on the goods side. Now, with respect to trade flows and volumes, limited evidence that there's a turnaround there. And at Manulife, we believe this is more of a secular shift rather than something that's somewhat cyclical in nature.
Okay. Marc, one quick word on crypto. It's been I don't know how closely you track it, but actually a bear market now, right? From technical definition. But is there more unwinding, and is the genesis of all of this what Japan is doing, or is it something else? Because with Japanese money being pulled out because of the yields there, a lot of people are passing on a thought that we could be closer to some bit of Armageddon in financial assets.
It's important sort of how to try to characterize digital assets, cryptocurrencies. In terms of how it behaves, the volatility profile, the price action, it's effectively a high beta risk asset. And to some extent, in the short term, it's driven by liquidity conditions, investor sentiment, speculative sentiment, and it can sort of be correlated with those carry trade beneficiaries. Now, what's going on in Japan is very interesting. You have a new government that's being formed that's looking to boost fiscal stimulus, and you're seeing steepening yield curves, and the returns that Japanese domestic investors can get on domestic assets relative to post-currency hedged foreign assets is starting to narrow. And so what you're probably seeing is some of the capital that's deployed in those speculative, more carry trade-like positions is being pulled back. And at the same time as well, not necessarily by design or consciously, that the Fed is running a very, very tight liquidity situation in the US, which is also constraining animal spirits and injections of new capital and new risk into some of these more financial assets. So that combination creates somewhat of a short-term headwind, but don't rule out the possibility that this could aggressively reverse at some point as a result of policy shifts. And in a sense, you're seeing a recycling of ownership of crypto assets from retail investors more towards the longer-term institutional investors as well. And it's that trade-off between the impatient versus the patient. But this should probably be seen in the context of a bit of a shift in market sentiment in recent weeks.
It has, in fact, rebounded in the past, hasn't it? Thanks so much, Marc, for taking the time. Pleasure speaking with you.